Hello everybody, it's Brian for GadgetUnit.com, and in this video I'll be showing you my MacBook Air setup. So it's been quite a while since I've done a video like this, mainly because my setup hasn't really changed since the last video, but I figured I can make this video for the sake of having a video out there because it has been a while since I've uploaded one. So this is my mid-2012 MacBook Air. Let's go to About This Mac and check it out. So I am running macOS 10 El Capitan, version 10.11.4, the latest build, public build that's available. Again, this is the mid-2012 13-inch MacBook Air. I'm running the Core i5 3427U processor clocked at 1.8 GHz, so it is a 2-core CPU, 4 gigs of RAM, not 8. So far, 4 has been serving me just fine. There was a time where I ran Windows virtual machines on here, and memory kind of ran out quickly, but I haven't had to do anything like that in quite a while, so 4 gigs has been fine. And of course, this does have the integrated Intel HD Graphics 4000 GPU. If we go to displays, you'll see that I am using the built-in display with the resolution of 1440 by 900, although I do have this scaled to 1920 by 1080 using Switch Res X. So that is how I'm recording a 1920 by 1080 video on a 1440 by 900 display. If we go to the storage tab, you'll see that I have 2 partitions. I have my OS 10 partition, and then I have my Windows 10 partition, which I use for games such as Rocket League and the Multi-Theft Auto multiplayer mod for GTA San Andreas, because this MacBook does handle both of those just fine. And the total size for the SSD is 128 gigs. So this is what my desktop looks like. It is incredibly clean. As you can see, I'm using the stock OS 10 wallpaper. As far as my desktop icons, I have my OS 10 partition shown as well as my Windows 10 partition. Nothing else is here on my desktop. I like to keep everything nice and clean because being clean means you're mostly organized, I guess. So down in my dock, I have Finder, of course, Calendar, Firefox, which is my preferred web browser, Tweetbot, Skype, TeamViewer, Spotify, Steam, Messages, Mail, which is my preferred email client, System Preferences. Then these two aren't usually here unless they're open, such as Switch Res X Control and QuickTime, which is what I'm using to record this video. Aside from the applications, I have my home folder, my applications folder, and then I do have Switch Res X minimized, and of course we have the recycle bin icon, which is empty, nice and clean. If I go into my home folder, you'll see that we have just the standard stuff, applications, which has GoToMeeting, as well as the Citrix Online Launcher software. Wish these wouldn't show up in my home folder, but it might be due to permissions, I guess, which is why they show up in my user folder rather than the system-wide applications folder. But of course, there are folders for desktop, documents, downloads, movies, music, pictures, public, and my Yandex disk. And I use Yandex because it's only $20 a year to get 100 gigs of online storage, and it works exactly like you'd expect a Dropbox or Google Drive to work. And the reason I switched from OneDrive to Yandex is because Microsoft dumped their 1 terabyte options, I believe, and they don't offer a 100 gig option, which for me is ideal. So I eventually came across Yandex, which is a Russian service, not that that's an issue, but it's only it's only $20 to get 100 gigs of space. And like I mentioned, it works exactly like Dropbox and Google Drive. So that's in my status bar. Also in my status bar, aside from the usual OS 10 options, we have Time Machine, VPN, Bluetooth, TeamViewer, iSnap, which is great for automatically placing 2 windows side by side. So if I open up this Finder window and another Finder window, I can use keyboard shortcuts. So for example, I'm using Option and the left and right arrow keys. So left makes the window fill up the left half of the screen, Option right fills up the right half, and then Option up maximizes the window. So this is something that Windows has had since Windows Vista, and it's incredibly useful for when you're running multiple windows and you want to easily space them out, size them out, and keep everything organized. And I think it's a free tweak from the Mac App Store. I haven't checked the listing there in quite a while. Next up is iCleaner, which is used to clean up your OS X's memory, but I haven't used this in a very long time. I find that OS X is very good at automatically managing memory, so I don't really use this too often, hardly ever. Let me open Launchpad next, and this is what it looks like. I try to keep this organized. I only have one page. In my stock folder, I have all the stock Apple apps, such as App Store, Calculator, and so on. And I actually did uninstall some of the stock ones because using an SSD with limited space, it is nice to clean up the apps that you don't want, such as DVD player and chess. So those are just a few of the Mac apps that I removed. In the utilities folder are all the utilities for OS X, like image capture and Boot Camp Assistant and disk utility. In my in-dock folder, I have all the icons in my dock in this folder because they don't really need to be listed out like this because you can still access your dock from Launchpad. Auto Start are the menu bar applications that automatically start with OS X. Here we have a folder full of Adobe junk such as installers, uninstallers, and things like that. In my others folder are applications that I don't use too often, so Air Server, Push to Talk, Sound to Flower, and the Unarchiver. And then everything else are standard applications such as Photoshop, Audacity, Clean My Mac. I think this is still the original version of Clean My Mac because I find the interface to be just fine. I also have Deluge, which is my preferred torrent client. Disk Inventory X for viewing up what folders are taking up the most amount of space, folders or files rather, on your disk. Next is FileZilla, a free FTP client. Google Earth Pro. I usually use this for calculating the distances between 2 points because Google Maps Online doesn't do that anymore through the Labs section. Next is Handbrake, which I use for converting videos from time to time. Typically, I just use my desktop for that because it's much faster. I have iBackup Bot, which lets me browse iPhone backups. I typically do this when I restore my iPhone from scratch, and I only want to restore certain application files rather than the entire backup. Next is iExplorer, which lets me browse the file system of my iOS device. It can be used for jailbroken and non-jailbroken devices, although if you are jailbroken with AFC2 installed from Cydia, you'll get access to the entire file system rather than just your user folder. Next up is Microsoft Excel, PowerPoint, Remote Desktop, and Word. I have Minecraft here, and I haven't played Minecraft on my MacBook Air in a very long time. So I'm not sure why I have it here, but I guess it's just for those rare occasions where I just might want to play it. Next is OBS Studio for streaming content from my MacBook. Next is Parallels Desktop, and I don't even think I have my Boot Camp partition set up in Parallels because I just haven't used a virtual machine on here in quite a while. Next is Sling Player Desktop. I typically use my iPhone for this, or I'll boot into Windows because the Windows player supports 60 frames per second playback, whereas the OS X version only does 30. Next is Theme Park, which lets me browse, well, you can do a lot of different things with it, but I mainly use it to browse versions of iTunes to see if there are any new device icons that show up in those, because in a few versions of iTunes that Apple put out, you can browse through the image files using Theme Park, and a few unreleased devices have shown up here and there. They don't really do that too often, but there have been a few recent builds where that has been the case. Next up is VLC. Everybody knows what that is. Next up is Wi-Fi Explorer, which allows me to scan the Wi-Fi networks around me and figure out what channel they are on, and being able to better optimize my own networks, given the ones that are already out there. Next is WinClone Pro, which lets you clone your Windows partitions into a single image file for backup or restore. And then we have Xcode, which I only use for the iPhone simulator for testing websites to make sure that they run properly on iPhones and iPads. Nothing really to show in my home folder. In my applications folder, here are all of the applications. Everything you see here should be under Launchpad somewhere. And I don't know if there's anything else on my MacBook Air to show. It's a really clean and simple setup. I don't really do anything too crazy on my MacBook. Usually it's just Firefox, Tweetbot, and Skype that are open. I use Firefox, obviously, to browse the web. Tweetbot is my preferred Twitter client, and I have Skype up there to check messages every so often. I don't really do too much more other than those on my MacBook Air. When I was in school, I used this for schoolwork, dealing with Microsoft Word and PowerPoint and things like that. But ever since I graduated, just about 2 years ago actually, I haven't really done too much with my MacBook, but it's still really nice to use this machine for just watching videos, browsing the internet. It's just such a lightweight computer, and it just still works very well. And I've had it for 3.5 years. Come August, it'll be 4 years old, and it hasn't really shown any signs of screwing up, except for a few battery replacements that I had to get. I had to get 2 battery replacements so far, but aside from that, performance has been fine. I think it'll last a really long time. So I think that's it with the video. If there are any questions or comments about this or anything else, feel free to leave everything down below in the comments area. But that's it with the video. So thanks a lot for watching, and I'll talk to you all in the next video.